We're going to talk about the works for yourself. Welcome to another episode of the Green Table Coffee Chat. I'm here with Ega. Ega used to work right from this table, remember Ega? Back in the day. So yeah. Where are you now, Ega? Where are you located?
Right now I'm in Cirebon, that is in Jawa Barat.
Okay.
Indonesia.
Okay, good. Yeah. Excellent. So it's almost like as if Ega is sitting right next to me on this table again. And I think I have that video where I did the office tour and I interviewed you right here on this table while you were working on some back-end coding. Okay, so basically we're going to have a cup of coffee. We're going to talk about career. We're going to talk about work. Ega, you're going to talk about whatever has been your biggest question of the week. And I'll try to do my best to use a chalkboard using a piece of leather and an iPad to explain both to you but also to a future audience of this video how to do things the Bukit Vista way. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, sir.
Okay, let's do it. So, Ega, do you have any questions this week from, let's say, your projects, your work? And by the way, I really enjoyed your demo at the All Hands. I think you can probably even suggest teaching Robin how to do a demo because it was very effective. And I happened to notice that before you even finished the demo, the entire company was thrilled to see the new feature on BV Go. So I think that's actually really strong. Do you want to talk about that as one of your strengths? Or do you want to talk about something that you're struggling with as a weakness?
Currently, I have question about me or about my level, LPT level.
Okay, your LPT level. Good. All right. Let's write that on this chalkboard. Okay, so Ega and I are going to talk about the LPT level. LPT is a private term we use inside Bukit Vista as part of Vistan culture. It originally came from actually the work of an intern here I forgot her name, but she was working on a really cool project for manpower planning. So I took some of her foundational work and then extended it into leadership planning, and we created a chart called the leadership planning table. So that then became known as LPT here at Bukit Vista, which we talk about all the time because it's very fundamental to how we do business. So let's go into your topic and then let's talk about your strength, okay? I think you have a lot of strength in storytelling, demonstration, visual communication capabilities. And so let's go into your topic first. What would you like to know about your current LPT level?
Yes.
Ega.
As a CEO, what do you truly expect from someone like me who's currently in an executive role as a mobile developer, Flutter developer? Beyond just delivering feature and fixing bugs, what kind of thinking behavior or initiative do you hope to see, especially from someone who wants to contribute meaningful to both the product and the culture of the company?
Excellent. That's such a beautiful question. I love answering that question. And this is my greatest opportunity to answer it. Okay, great. So later on, Ega, you're probably going to be watching some of this video again, but I'm optimizing it not for your current experience. I'm optimizing it for the documentation experience. So let's talk about execution, okay? So execution is what we generally call the lowest level on the LPT chain, okay? So execution, we'll just write EXE to make it more easy to see, okay? EXE. Okay, let's just write this. Execution. So based on execution, let's do this. Let's stick to source information, shall we? Ega, would you be happy to do this for me? Could you send me a link on this iPad here, which you will do through Slack, of the LPT table? Do you know where to find that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Table.
Great. I found it already.
Oh, yeah. That is very cool. Yeah?
And do you know why I found it already?
What?
Do you know how I was able to find it so quickly?
How is that?
Because I have good knowledge management. Knowledge management here, okay? KM, knowledge management. So this is a very practical demonstration of how knowledge management works. ladies and gentlemen who are watching this video. Now, the illustration here about knowledge management was Ega was going to look for this piece of information, which is the reference information to explain how LPT works. I was able to find it quickly, faster than Ega, okay? But why? Why was I able to find it quickly? Because, Ega, do you want to guess?
Awesome.
Okay, the reason I was able to find it quickly because I had the vision originally that this should be public, okay? Because everybody who is a potential employee should be able to read this as easily as an internal employee. So guess what? We made it on the website. And since it's on the website, I just searched in Google LPT Bukit Vista and I found it. So I'm guessing you were trying to look for it on Coda or some of our internal documentation, correct?
Yeah, correct, sir.
Okay, good. So that is a simple demonstration of how somebody with knowledge management should be able to find the knowledge really quickly, really accurately, and make sure that their knowledge is correct and up to date, okay? So this isn't just, let's say, an explanation. This is demonstration of how we do knowledge management now, okay? All right, so let's go and answer your question. What is expected actually in execution? Well, the execution phase, we often cross-reference as operations, okay? So in this position where you are executing, where you're delivering code that fulfills a feature, a functionality, a purpose, you're producing the back-end code that enables that feature, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, good. Can you do your work without having anybody to tell you what to do, Ega?
I do to write code from the design and I connect to the database and I write code from menampilkan UI,
Good.
Display the UI,
Excellent.
The grid UI in mobile.
Excellent. Okay. My question wasn't whether or not you can do the job. My question was, do you need to be supervised to do the job? If there's no supervisor, could you still get the job done?
Okay, correct, sir.
Okay, good. Then you probably are a little bit underrated right now. You might actually be sub-management capable, okay? Sub-management capable is the first level LPT above operational execution, okay? There's generally are people who are in work activity mode. They do the activity, but they cannot personally guarantee the quality of their activity, which means mostly like an intern. An intern can write code, but an intern should not ship code into production without getting a sub-manager to approve and check for the work quality. Okay, so that's the first difference. The first difference between a person who is purely in execution and a person who is sub-management capable is that a sub-management capable person should be able to guarantee the quality of their own work consistently, okay? Which means that the manager can trust that person to do the job. All right, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, sir.
Great. And the reason why that makes sense, and the reason why that's good, is that it allows the manager now to move on to their next job if they don't need to supervise you. Imagine in this year, Ega, we take on new interns for 2026, okay? So you get a new intern and they can't be trusted to ship any code, right? You have to watch what they're doing. They make bugs, they write technical debt. It's just really, really frustrating. So the only way they can help you is they can take over some of the hard labor, but you still have to double check what they do. So that slows down your career progress as a manager and slows down your career because this person cannot be entrusted to function independently, okay? However, if that person can go from execution to sub-management, all right, then that means their manager doesn't need to check, their manager can just trust their work, okay? Does that make sense, Ega? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, good. So that's the first level. Hey, we might not actually have graded you correctly because the understanding of what sub-management was actually not agreed upon between the upper managers in engineering and the upper managers in other parts of the company. So this is why the engineering, let's say, metric for sub-management is a bit different, okay? I think in engineering, they often think that somebody sub-management capable has to look after people. but that might not be the case. If you can look after yourself, we consider that sub-manager capable, okay? You can point out mistakes in, let's say, the work, but you might not be the person who is directly responsible, okay? All right, for the person's career. All right, that's it. All right, let's go to the next level. Let's then talk about your story. Let's say, for example, you come into the company as an intern and your supervisor gives you small jobs to write. They have to write then the test functions, they have to check if your code is well integrated, they have to basically supervise you all the time. They tell you that this is the problem, they tell you that this is the problem, and then you listen, you're able to correct your mistakes. You're doing great execution, okay? To the point where after a while, let's say you fully understand and now you're ready for the next challenge. You're ready to start writing code and you're ready to start using vibe coding. You're still ready to start doing more of your work in Cursor. Then we think that the next stage for you is knowledge management, KM here, okay? Knowledge management means that you're not really just using your skill as a programmer to do your job. You're thinking more about knowledge. You're thinking more academically, like the way a computer scientist would think. You're thinking about, okay, how does memory work? How do databases get faster? What are the conditions that actually I need to understand such that my work can be more efficient, okay? So knowledge management, you have valuable knowledge that can get things done. And even if you don't have the skill to implement that knowledge, you're being paid for your knowledge, okay? So let's say you can give that knowledge to an AI agent, you can give that knowledge to a new sub-management capable person, they can do that, then now you're not actually doing your work yourself, you're a planner, you're a producer, you're a person who is, let's say, a script writer. You're giving other people jobs, but they're using your knowledge that you're generating originally and collecting and making sure it runs okay, okay? So that is then the knowledge management stage. So, do you have any questions about knowledge management?
Already clear, sir.
Okay, you might ask this question, right? So just earlier, I illustrated to you that I have better knowledge management than you do, but you have to realize that it is domain specific, Ega. Domain specific means I have better knowledge management about this topic of LPTs than you do. You should definitely, even an execution level programmer, have better knowledge management about the code base, about best programming practices, about all the engineering knowledge than I do, even as CEO, okay? So knowledge management is very domain specific, which means that every person in the company should have different knowledge specialties, and that is what makes them good. I would say the safe way to know if you're truly doing knowledge management is this. If you find yourself that you're not writing code yourself, if you find yourself that you're just simply maybe doing master code and giving this code to AI agents to run, or you are essentially now telling other programmers and other people, these are the best practices. This is the right way to do it. This other way is going to be incorrect. And you don't need to do that work yourself. You just need to have the knowledge of how the work should be done, but the best knowledge of how that work should be done. And that then becomes your obligation to the company is to make sure that the company is operating under the best knowledge. Okay? Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the executive position that we have right now that is in charge of knowledge management for our company?
Knowledge, the example, that is maybe management is Kak Gani maybe?
Yes, very good. Kak Gani is the chief of knowledge management in training at the moment. So his role is to make sure that all the knowledge to run the company's services, okay, such as partner, guest, only those two domains, partner and guest knowledge, are done correctly. That's his main focus. His job is to make sure that every listing is represented accurately so that each guest does not have a problem with accuracy. His job is to make sure all the knowledge we accumulate about managing partners is correctly distributed to each partner and each relationship and each guest, okay? So, however, Gani does not have KM over engineering. Who do you think has knowledge management in the engineering scope?
Knowledge management in engineering scope is like graffiti, maybe?
Yes, yeah, correct. Havidi is probably the index and the encyclopedia of all major engineering knowledge. Yes, correct. So himself and Bali work together on just really understanding what are the critical practices, what are the critical workflows, what are the critical technologies, and how do they work, okay, for everything that we have. All right, so that's Vidi's job, okay, and Bayu's job. So you see, knowledge management is also a different type of work, okay? Ideally, as a VP of engineering, using the right knowledge, you're able to avoid any problems by, let's say, using the wrong knowledge. Let's say you're still using Excel spreadsheets to record data and share data that's probably not using the right knowledge correctly, okay? All right, does that answer knowledge management now, sir?
Okay.
All right, great. Any questions so far before we move on to the next subject?
Yeah. I have question that is,
Sure, okay.
When I reach the level of an executor, will we still need human executor or the focus narrowly bigger level function like some knowledge management and leadership?
Okay, so let's ask this question. Execution, okay, I have a perfect, you're talking about this concept of execution extinction, right? Will we ever need to actually, will there be a time when execution will no longer be necessary? I have a secret for you, are you ready?
What is that?
I also execute from time to time.
Oh, what do you execute, sir?
Strategic user research. Strategic
Sure.
user research. SU, strategic user research, a term that we use often here at Bukit Vista, okay? So, execution for the purpose of fulfilling the task is execution. But execution for the purpose of gaining insight, of getting more sensitivity, of getting high observation to detect nuance, to detect strategic opportunities and threats, that's a different type of execution. Okay, that is always necessary in my entire 15-year history of running Bukit Vista. And the reason why is because it's only through really, really high-touch execution that we get high signals and high information and high amount of context gathering with our users, with our tools, with everything, right? If you don't deep dive into the code base, if you don't get really messy with the users, if you don't go and occasionally go into the field, see the property, try to fix things, you don't understand how to lead people. You don't understand the context that they cannot understand. This is the difference. The same job being executed by an executive might have many, many different implications, okay? Let's say, for example, I go into the field and I clean a room and let's say I prepare a room for service, okay? And I've done that before. So I'm doing operational execution by cleaning the room. But maybe I find out that the supervisor is not actually, that the person doing the supervision has people on their team that are not able to do the job without supervision. So I can observe that there's no sub-management happening. And I can also look around and I can see, well, this is strange. They don't have the right chemicals to remove this stain. They don't have the right tools to get their job done quickly. I'm then looking and seeing that they're not applying the right knowledge to actually do the task, even if the task is being done correctly, okay? Maybe then I also see that there's a lack of strategy, that they're cleaning the house in the wrong direction or in the wrong way, or any of these other factors, okay? Eventually I can go and say, maybe we put the wrong people in charge of managing the housekeepers. Maybe these people are not creating the right incentives, and that explains why we're seeing so many, let's say, unsatisfactory practices in the field. So as I think an executive, as a person who is looking to grow your career, never divorce yourself from execution from time to time to do research, okay? Because that is important. You're never going to get as close, as intimate, as strategic as if you move closer and closer to the information, okay? And the reason for that is related to a concept which I call, wait, I know how to find it. I find it faster here online. Knowledge management, you see? Okay, let's see if I can find it on the browser really quickly. So we can challenge you, Eve. Wait, we can do this. Find me a sensor actuator system and an environment diagram. Didn't work. Sorry, let's try again. Find me a, find me a sensor actuator system environment diagram. Perfect. All right, perfect. All right, this is the diagram I'm looking for, okay? This is the diagram we're looking. Okay, so take a quick screenshot of that, Ega, so you'll have it available for you, but otherwise I'll explain it like this, okay? So the way this works is, and why it's important, I think, for senior leaders to get involved is this. Once you get to a more higher level, you're going to be using the power of the system to solve your problems, not the power of your individual execution. However, the system only can be improved if there are better sensors and better actuators, okay? Now, here's the problem when you choose to build sensors. As a sensor, essentially it is a model. It is a simplified way of collecting information, processing that information into signals that go into the system. These things can be things like temperature, booking pace, all these things that we give a metric to, okay? That's the job of a sensor. Then these signals go into the system for decision making, for planning, for strategic actuation. Then signals are sent to actuators as a system. Actuators can be things like, let's say for our guests. Let's say for our guests, what's an example of an actuator for our guests? What can we do to change the guest experience? What are our actuators?
Actuator from our guests.
To our guests, not from our guests. What can we do that will actuate our guests?
I don't think so, sir.
Okay, this is difficult, so I'll give you the answer, okay, in the interest of time. The sensor from a guest is probably an inbound Airbnb request, right? So the inbox of the Airbnb is, okay, let's say for example, we pick up an inbound message on our Airbnb inbox for the Chandra account, okay? So the inbox serves as a sensor. It serves as a sensor to detect what guests are communicating to us, correct? And then we feed that signal, which is a parsed email message that then goes into a RAG model that then gets backed up by the OpenAI API to Gaia, which then sends a response back as a signal, which then gets encoded back into, once again, a message, an email back to the guest. So the inbox is the inbound sensor. The outbox is the actuator, okay? Now, let me ask you a trick question. What purpose is the actions of BVGo? Do the actions serve as a partner sensor or a partner actuator, Ega?
Sensors.
No, well, maybe, it depends. But the purpose of the actions are throws and newsletters that we put to change partner behavior, right?
Yeah.
And things that you do to change the environment, those are actuators, okay? Now, you might be partially correct that the actions could be a sensor what part of the actions could be a sensor, Ega?
What's it? Can you repeat?
What part of BVGo actions could be the sensor? What part of it could be a sensor?
That is user viewing the action or newsletter using comment.
Yes!
And like.
Excellent. Very, very good. Very good. You got it. Yes. That would be a perfect example of how the BVGo app could potentially be, the action could be a sensor. You got it. Okay, you understand now. All right. Now, let's go back up to the big picture. What we're trying to do inside BVGo is we're trying to detect partner sentiments and partner relationship situations that require our attention. What we actuate are newsletters and feeds that throw out based on whatever the partner's feeling, correct? But here's the problem, all right? The really, really rich information that you get from partners, you have to be close to them. So you have to kind of execute. You have to pour them a drink, you have to talk to their face, you have to really use your whole body to be a sensor, to collect all that good information. Because sometimes a text is not good enough as a signal, as a sensor, okay? Sometimes you have to look at them in the face, you have to see their anger, you have to see their frustration, you have to see what they're experiencing, and then you can use your body as a sensor. So the answer is execution is never extinct. Execution is still very, very necessary on occasion as a senior, as an executive, to get into there so that you get insight, so you get into what we call the details. Okay, I've over-explained that, Ega, but is that part clear?
Yeah, it is clear.
Okay, good. Now, there's another part to that. Do you want to know what the other hidden secret is to execution?
Wow, what is it?
As a senior executive, as a manager, should you find yourself doing execution all the time?
Probably not.
Correct. If you are doing execution all the time, something is deeply wrong. Because if you have a team, if you have people who are executors, it means you're not giving them any responsibility. In fact, you're taking responsibility from them. You're taking experience from them. You're actually cheating them out of getting any experience to learn how to do the work themselves. So if you do have a team and you find that you're executing all the time, you're probably not a manager. You're probably an individual contributor in that case, okay? So part of management means that you need to give the experience and the responsibility of execution to an executor, but then you are responsible for their result as a manager, which is emotionally difficult sometimes because you might be better than them at execution, okay? This is why it's always really important as you go up your career to hire the right people who are always better than you, right? Otherwise, you will never have a nice day. You will always have to go and teach somebody how to do something that you know how to do, and that will trap you in a cycle of always executing instead of finding somebody that can execute better than yourself, and then you lead them and take responsibility for their work correctly, and that's how you manage.
That is very good, sir.
Yes, and most people, they have that problem. They are afraid of hiring people more talented than them on execution. They're a good sushi chef, so they don't hire a better sushi chef. They're a really good back-end programmer, so they don't want to hire anyone better than them. But that is not your work when you go up the LPT, because eventually your work, if you're going up the LPT as a career, is that you should reach upper management level. And when you are upper management level, that means you should only occasionally go in to do execution, to do research. But if you're doing it all the time, then you're clearly missing the bigger picture and you're not getting the benefit of where you should be, okay? So that concludes and brings us to, I think, maybe the last stage of the LPT, okay? And that then is upper management, okay? When you're doing upper management correctly, your work should be primarily involved in developing culture, recruiting, nurturing, and in the case of, let's say, underperformance, terminating people who are doing the actual work. If you're doing the actual work, then you're probably never going to make decisions about hiring, nurturing, and terminations, okay? So those become your actuators and your only actuators as an upper manager when you get to that level. So your job is to find the best talent. Your job is to get that talent to stay and do their best work under your supervision. And your job is to help them grow so that they can attain the highest LPT in their capabilities and do a better job. And hopefully you get a cycle where they can teach somebody else and they can teach somebody else. And then you have a really beautiful culture that keeps on growing on its own momentum. Okay?
Okay, sir.
All right. We'll get to vision in another episode. It's already pretty tall, but I think that should give you a pretty good enough, let's say, momentum to go about, right? Ega, how helpful has this session been from 1 to 5 in terms of answering your questions about how the LPT system works at Bukit Vista and what you can actually do in order to make progress and positively transform in your career?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that was a question. So dari 1 sampai 5, what would you give this coaching session?
10, sir.
Oh, wow. Okay, too good. Well, I'm sure there's things I can still do better.
For
Yeah.
me.
Okay, good. Good. Well, if you give it a 10, that means that we've done our job today in knowledge management, okay? So, and in knowledge management, we've recorded now during this episode knowledge that can be helpful for yourself, for your team, for anybody who is, let's say, going to work here anymore, and we've saved time from having to re-explain this over and over again. They can just watch this episode and save a meeting and not have to ask about how LPT works, okay? We did not get to talk about strategist. We did not get to talk about visionary. Perhaps that can be a topic for another coffee table, our green table coffee chat. What do you think?
Yeah, that is interesting, sir.
Okay, fantastic, very good. Ega, all right, that's it. I'll stop the recording now.